phone calls Hamas to return with a written response. In a recent gun attack in the U.S., 4 officers fatally shot and 4 others wounded in North Carolina. 2 suspects held after 3-hour standoff in Charlotte. Flash floods wreak havoc in central Kenya. Over 50 people swept away. Toll may rise. Police initially blames the flooding on a burst dam. G7 countries set global climate precedent, commits to coal phase out by 2035, with shutting down their coal-fired power plants in the first half of the 2030s. Ministers will issue a final communique with the details on Tuesday. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Hamas to accept a ceasefire proposal on his visit to the Middle East. The proposal includes a 40-day truce in return for the release of hostages and the prospect of displaced families being allowed back into northern Gaza. Blinken traveled to Saudi Arabia to meet with U.S. allies before heading to Jordan and Israel. Nick Harper gets us details from Washington.
Topping the agenda for Antony Blinken has been trying to secure a ceasefire deal and trying to secure the release of the remaining hostages held by Hamas. The Secretary of State met with multiple officials in Saudi's capital Riyadh on Monday, including with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and he met foreign ministers from 5 other Arab countries. Blinken described the updated ceasefire proposal as extraordinarily generous and urged Hamas to accept the deal.
Hamas has before it a proposal that is extraordinarily generous on the part of Israel. And in this moment, the only thing standing between the people of Gaza and a ceasefire is Hamas. They have to decide, and they have to decide quickly. So we're looking to that, and I'm hopeful that they will make the right decision.
Israel has scaled back the number of hostages it's asking Hamas to free in the first phase of this potential truce. Reports suggest it's reducing its demand from 40 hostages to 33 and requesting that women, older people and those who are sick are prioritised. Blinken also discussed increasing the delivery of humanitarian assistance to Palestinians in Gaza, and he warned Israel not to go ahead with its planned ground offensive on Rafah in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Washington worries that Israel still intends to press ahead with an assault in an area where hundreds of thousands of Palestinian civilians, most of them displaced because of fighting in other parts of Gaza, are currently sheltering. Blinken continues his diplomatic tour, visiting Jordan and Israel on Tuesday. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden has urged leaders from Qatar and Egypt to exert all efforts to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas. Biden held a separate phone call with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. He also discussed the dangers of a military escalation in Rafah. Besides, the two presidents also stressed on the necessity to work to prevent expansion of the conflict and reaffirmed the importance of the two-state solution as the means to achieve security, peace and stability in the region. The U.S. military has started building a large floating pier off Gaza's coast to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid. Ships will deliver aid from Cyprus to the pier, where it will be loaded onto trucks to transfer across Gaza. The pier will be attached to the shore by a temporary causeway, which the trucks will use. U.S. officials say the pier will be operational by early May. Once operational, up to 150 trucks of aid could be delivered a day, with 2 million meals, enough to feed almost all of the territory's 2.3 million population. The World Central Kitchen, a US-based charity, resumed relief work in the Gaza Strip after nearly a month-long suspension. The World Central Kitchen said in a press statement that they have so far distributed more than 43 million meals and are eager to provide millions more. The organization stressed on the importance of delivering food aid to northern Gaza, noting that approximately 8 billion meals are ready to enter Gaza through the Rafah border crossing. The charity suspended its humanitarian aid operations in Gaza on 2nd April after 7 of its staff members were killed in an Israeli strike. Let's get to updates related to Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, Ukrainian Black Sea port of Odessa was struck by a Russian missile on Monday, leaving 4 dead and 28 injured. Ukrainian Navy spokesperson said that the strike was conducted by an Iskander-M ballistic missile with a cluster warhead. The road mobile short-range ballistic missile with a range of up to 500 kilometers is harder to intercept. Odessa has been a frequent target of Russian missile and drone attacks, particularly the port infrastructure. The frontline situation has worsened for Ukraine as it awaits the delivery of Western weapons, especially from the US. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said this as he met NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg in Kyiv. Zelensky said some of the aid had started to arrive, but added that it needed to be delivered faster. His comments come after the US agreed to a $61 billion package of mostly military aid for Ukraine. While on his part, Stoltenberg expressed optimism that when the arms were delivered, it would help turn the tide. The debris from a missile that landed in the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv on January 2nd was from a North Korean Hwasong 11 series ballistic missile. And according to the 32-page report by the United Nations sanctions monitors, I quote, debris recovered from a missile that landed in Kharkiv in Ukraine on 2nd of January 2024 derives from a DPRK Hwasong 11 series missile and is in violation of the arms embargo on North Korea. However, neither did they identify from where the missile was launched nor by whom. North Korea has been under UN sanctions for its ballistic missile and nuclear programs since 2006, and those measures have been strengthened over the years. All right, shifting focus to a recent firing incident in the US now. 4 law enforcement officers were killed and another 4 were wounded in Charlotte, North Carolina. The incident occurred when the officers who were killed were attempting to serve a warrant for possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. They arrived at a residence where the suspect was located and he began firing on the officers. In return firing, 1 suspect has been killed and 2 others were taken into custody. US President Joe Biden was briefed on the incident and has spoken with North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper. Haiti's Transition Council will vote for the country's next president on Tuesday as part of the efforts to bring the Caribbean country under control amid rampant gang violence. The Transition Council took power in a ceremony on Thursday, formalizing the resignation of former Prime Minister Ariel Henry. The transitional government's mandate runs until February 2026, by when there are slated to be elections and cannot be renewed. The council's installation is seen as a key step towards deployment of a multinational security mission Henry requested in 2022 and the United Nations approved more than 6 months ago. Mexico held its second presidential debate on Sunday night, that is April 28th, with just a little more than 1 month from the June election. The focus was on climate change. Mexico's main opposition presidential candidate, Xochitl Gálvez, called her rival, frontrunner Claudia Sheinbaum, the candidate of lies during the pre-election debate. The attack by Gálvez comes as the latest opinion poll shows she is struggling to gain momentum with 5 weeks to go before the June 2nd election. Sheinbaum, for her part, vowed to improve water recycling in Mexico, which has been facing drought and widespread water shortages. She frequently made reference to the achievements of the current government of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Panama's presidential hopefuls made a last dash for votes on Sunday as campaigning closed ahead of the vote on 5th of May. In Panama City, frontrunner Jose Raul Molino rallied the supporters. Molino replaced former President Ricardo Martinelli after he was banned from running due to a prison conviction last year on money laundering charges. In La Correra, Romulo Rao, who is second place in the polls, called on voters to turn out and get him past the finish line. Also in Panama City, Martin Torrijos campaigned on an anti-corruption ticket. The former president has been placed third in the most opinion polls. With 8 candidates set to appear on the ballot, pundits are predicting a tight race. Georgia faces more protests this week as lawmakers resume debate on a foreign agents law, which was introduced to Parliament earlier this month. Thousands of people protested against the bill for days when it passed its first hurdle in Parliament in mid-April. Since then, students have been protesting on a nightly basis, facing off against riot police. The EU has repeatedly said that the bill is a threat. Britain and the United States have also opposed the bill, while Hungary and Russia have defended it. The bill would force organizations receiving more than 20% of their funding from abroad to register as foreign agents. A parliamentary committee approved the bill's second reading on Monday in a tense hearing from which all opposition members were expelled. Parliament is expected to approve the second of the 3 readings on Tuesday amid opposition protests. The Philippines and the U.S. troops are participating in the amphibious assault drills as part of their annual joint military exercises. Now, the drills run until May 10th amid high tensions between Beijing and Manila. Both of them have made claims to maritime territory in the South China Sea, as Laura Westbrook reports from Hong Kong.
The Balikatan, or shoulder-to-shoulder military exercises, take place every year, and they involve some 16,000 mostly American and Filipino troops. But for the first time, the Philippine Coast Guard will take part, as well as the French Navy, and they will take place some 12 nautical miles outside of the Philippines' territorial waters. They are also simulating retaking enemy-occupied islands facing Taiwan and the South China Sea. And this is significant because we have seen increased clashes between the Philippine Coast Guard and Chinese vessels when the Philippines has gone on these resupply missions. Now, the U.S. Secretary of State recently visited China last week, and he said that freedom of navigation in the South China Sea was incredibly vital. This is an incredibly strategic area of the region. It sees trillions of trade pass through every year. The response from China has been that the Philippines bringing in other countries to flex its muscles in the South China Sea will only undermine regional stability. Laura Westbrook in Hong Kong, reporting for DD India.
Beijing and Manila have repeatedly clashed in recent months at the submerged reef, which Philippines says is in its exclusive economic zone, but which China also claims as its own. In the latest, both sides witnessing standoff, and they traded accusations over aggressive maneuvers there, and the Philippines recently summoned a Chinese diplomat over the actions. Tensions flared again as China's Coast Guard said on Tuesday that it barred a Philippine Coast Guard ship and another vessel from waters adjacent to the Scarborough shore. Also, the Philippines Coast Guard accused its Chinese counterpart on Tuesday of using water cannon in a disputed area of the South China Sea, which damaged one of its vessels. China and Philippines previously said that they would seek better communication and management around skirmishes in the vast South China Sea, but tensions have increased recently, especially after Philippines forged stronger diplomatic and military ties with the U.S. In a tragic incident, a bus crashed in the Andean mountains of northern Peru, killing 25 people and injuring 13 more. The bus was heading to the town of Soroshuco on Sunday evening when it overturned and crashed down a slope into a river. 3 days of mourning were announced. Accidents are relatively common along Peru's precarious roads, with around 24 people dying in a crash in September and at least 24 dying when a bus plunged off a cliff in January 2023. Flash floods wreaked havoc across central Kenya, killing at least 45 people and injuring over 110 others. People in villages near Mai Mahiu, about 37 miles from the capital, Nairobi, were swept away as they slept. Rescue efforts are continuing to pull people out of the mud, with fears that the death toll could rise. Police initially blamed the flooding on a burst dam. However, the Ministry of Water later said that it was caused by a river tunnel under a railway embankment becoming blocked with debris. The deaths have brought the overall toll across Kenya from heavy rains and flooding since March to over 140 now. More than 185,000 people have been displaced. The group of 7 energy ministers on Monday pledged to close their coal plants in the first half of the 2030s, potentially setting a global example for fighting the climate crisis. G7 energy and ecological transition ministers have agreed to exit from coal usage by 2035. On Tuesday, the ministers will issue a final communique detailing the G7 commitments to decarbonize their economies. The Dubai Food Festival has returned for its 11th edition following the recent unusual rainfall in the city. Celebrating Dubai's diverse culinary landscape, the festival, organized by Dubai's Festival and Retail Establishment, offers a range of culinary experiences, especially the menus and events. One of the festival's standout features is the debut of Galt and Milau Culinary Innovators event, gathering 12 of Dubai's top chefs under one roof. You're watching DD India Live. We're heading for a short break. But after the break, in line with the election coverage at DD India, we get you a special report on the hand-rolled cigarettes industry of West Bengal. India's share in global services exports has more than doubled over the last 18 years. Stay with us for all the action from Madrid Open. We get you the super performance of world number 2 Yannick Sinner and world number 1 Iga Swiatek. Both of them scripted stupendous victories.
Hype versus facts. In-depth news and analysis with experts who will help you decide why this election matters. DD India is the main election headquarters, with numbers most accurate, data most reliable, and viewership across the platforms. Stay tuned to the Great Indian Election only on weekdays at 8:30 p.m. IST and 1500 hours GMT.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Live, and now we'll get you the latest on the world's largest democratic election in India. Ahead of the third phase of the Indian general elections, campaigning continues to gain steam on Tuesday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed a public gathering in Maharashtra's Madha. Prime Minister said that the huge crowd at the gathering showed people's support for the ruling National Democratic Alliance. 93 seats, including 11 seats in Maharashtra, are going to polls on May 7th in the third phase. And more rallies by leaders from various parties are scheduled for today. Union Home Minister Amit Shah will be addressing a public meeting in West Bengal. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh will be addressing a public meeting in Madhya Pradesh's Khandwa and Barwani. Opposition Congress leader Rahul Gandhi is scheduled to address a public meeting in MP's Bhind. 8 seats in the state are going to polls in the third phase. Four West Bengal seats, Murshidabad, Jangipur, Uttar and Dakshin Maldaha, are going to polls in phase 3 of India's general elections on the 7th of May. At least 2 million voters in this region depend on the bidi or the hand-rolled cigarettes industry for their livelihood. Now, the industry is on the verge of decline due to several reasons, ranging from high taxes to increased health consciousness. The woes of the workers are a big electoral issue in these constituencies. Gautam Roy gets us more from Jangipur.
In a beedi factory in Aurangabad, men are hard at work. They do it all, from sorting to roasting and packaging beedis into bundles and packets, for a stagnant monthly pay of around $80. They say they have some social security, but it's only on paper.
They cut money from our salary for ESI, but there is no health facility here. There is no card and no arrangement for our treatment.
Bidis or hand-rolled cigarettes form a major part of the economy of this region around Jangipur constituency, which is going to polls in the third phase of West Bengal on the 7th of May. It employs over 2 million workers, and both the workers and the industry itself have a range of issues in the election season, from low wages to high taxes, and they're becoming a major concern for all political parties in this phase. In villages all around Jangipur, women do nearly 80% of the rolling work in an unorganized work-from-home fashion for local contractors. They get a little over $2 for rolling 1,000 bidis. Most of them can only do 600 to 800 a day and work only a few days a week.
I have no benefits. If I fall ill, I can't afford any treatment and we have no hospital.
After the GST regime was implemented, the bidi industry came under the 28% tax bracket. Its workers also develop health issues, even cancer, due to close proximity with tobacco for years. Rivals blame the TNC-ruled West Bengal government for the sorry state of affairs.
Bidi workers are not getting anything. They should have housing, they should have health facilities and better wages. But people who have nothing to do with this industry, who are prosperous, are reaping all benefits.
Trinamool Congress's Jangipur candidate and sitting MP Khalilur Rahman is himself a bidi baron. He says he'll address bidi workers and industry's issues after the elections.
Let the elections conclude. Our effort will be to sit with the Factory Owners Association and start with an increase in the workers' wages.
Bidi is also called the poor man's cigarette, and yet livelihoods of millions depend on it. It's an industry in decline, and in poll season is looking for support from elected representatives. In Jangipur, West Bengal, with camera person Uttam Singh, Gautam Roy, DD India.
India's share in global services exports has more than doubled over the last 18 years, and rise of global capacity centers, that is the GCCs, has played a crucial role in the expansion. A global report was released on Monday which said that the proliferation of GCCs has given a boost to real estate, expanded services exports, added to economic growth, created jobs and led to rapid increase in revenues for the firms. All right, on to sports now. World number 2 Yannick Sinner overcame some hip discomfort and a less than perfect serving performance to advance past Russia's Pavel Kotov 6-2, 7-5 into the 4th round of the Madrid Open. The tournament's top seed in the absence of Novak Djokovic, Sinner will face another Russian, Karen Khachanov, next as he targets a third Masters 1000 title. For his part, Khachanov overcame Sinner's Italian compatriot Flavio Cobolli 7-5, 6-4. Talking of the women action now, world number 1 Iga Swiatek made light work of Spain's Sara Sorribes Tormo in the 4th round of the Madrid Open, wrapping up an emphatic 6-1, 6-0 victory in just over an hour. The result sees last year's losing finalist continue her bid for a maiden Masters 1000 title on clay, while leaving no Spanish representation left in the women's singles draw. That's it in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screens to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.